I was in New York, sipping coffee on a chilly morning when my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer. "Are you aware that the estate has been sold?" My heart dropped. "The estate?" I asked, confused. "Yes, your ancestral property. It's been sold for $3 million. The paperwork has your brother's signature." I stood still. That estate wasn't just land, it was our heritage. The home where our grandparents lived. The fields our father planted with his own hands. It was never meant to be sold. I hadn't given any permission. And it was worth at least $9 million, even by conservative estimates. I immediately called my younger brother, Ryan. He answered casually, "Hey, what's up? You sold the estate?" I asked coldly. There was a pause. "Yeah, figured we could use the money." "We?" "I never agreed to that." I snapped. "Well, your name wasn't on the latest deed, remember?" he said smugly. "I handled everything." That moment, I knew. This wasn't stupidity. This was betrayal. And I wasn't going to let it slide that I couldn't believe it. Ryan had the audacity to not only sell the estate, but act like I was overreacting. He always had a jealous streak, ever since we were kids. When Dad passed away, the estate was supposed to be jointly managed. But since I had moved abroad for work, Ryan offered to handle the paperwork back home. I trusted him. Apparently, that trust was a mistake. I went through my files and legal documents. And that's when I saw it. A forged signature. On the updated deed transfer, it showed my rights were signed over to Ryan months ago. But I never signed anything. He forged my name. I immediately called my lawyer again. "This is fraud," I said. "I want a full investigation." He paused. "We can try to reverse the sale, but if the buyer was unaware of the forgery, it could get complicated. You'll need solid evidence." I flew back to my hometown the next morning. When I arrived, the estate was already under renovation by the new buyer. They had no idea they bought stolen property. Ryan was nowhere to be found. But I knew him. And I knew where he'd be hiding the money. Ryan was never smart with money. Flashy clothes, expensive cars, bottle service weekends. That was his idea of success. So I checked his socials. Big mistake for him. There he was flaunting a brand new Tesla, vacationing in Dubai, and dining at rooftop restaurants with fake smiles and flashy captions. But the best part? He posted a picture holding a drink with the caption, "Cheers to the easiest $3 million I've ever made." My blood boiled. He wasn't just a liar. He was proud of it. I reached out to a family friend who worked in finance. "If Ryan deposited that much money, can you trace it?" I asked. He smirked. "If he's as dumb as he seems, then yes." A few hours later, I had a name. Trident Holdings' private account, Dubai branch. So Ryan wasn't just spending the money. He was moving it offshore. But he forgot something important. He used our family lawyer's name as a reference on the transaction. That meant I had a legal hook. A reason to challenge the transaction, especially with a forged deed involved. But I wasn't going to just take him to court. Oh no. I wanted him to feel the betrayal. Exactly the way he made me feel. And to do that, I needed to get even closer. The plan was simple. Get close to Ryan, pretend everything was fine, and wait for the perfect moment to hit him with the truth. I knew Ryan well enough to understand his patterns. He loved attention, especially from people who didn't know his dark side. So I did what any good strategist would do. I played along. I called him up. "Hey, Ree, I'm coming back to town next week. Want to grab dinner?" I said, trying to sound casual. He hesitated. "Yeah, sure. Been a while. We'll catch up." I kept my tone neutral, even though every fiber of my being wanted to scream at him. The betrayal hurt more than I could express. But now wasn't the time for emotion. Dinner came around quickly, and we met at a posh steakhouse, the kind of place he loved to show off at. He looked different. Cockier. Like he had already won. As we sat down, I could see the way he looked at me, half guilty, half proud. He knew he had wronged me, but he also believed I wouldn't do anything about it. We talked casually about life, work, and even joked about old memories. He had no clue that beneath my calm exterior, I was building my trap. I leaned in. "By the way, I was looking into the estate sale. Seems like the new owners are making some big changes." His face froze for a second, but he quickly recovered, taking a sip of his wine. "Yeah, it's pretty crazy. They're investing a lot into it. Honestly, I thought the place was worth way less." I smiled, hiding the storm inside. "Really? So, you're saying it was a good deal?" He nodded, a little too eagerly. "Absolutely. Best decision I've made in a while." I paused for a moment, watching him squirm. You sure about that? Because it's funny. The paperwork I have shows a very different story. He choked on his wine. What do you mean? He asked, his voice suddenly shaky. You know what I mean, Ryan, I said, letting the tension build. We're going to talk about that $3 million sale and what you did to get it. Ryan's face turned pale, and for the first time that night, I saw fear in his eyes that Ryan's usual swagger evaporated. He put his glass down and leaned back in his chair, trying to hide his nervousness with a forced grin. What's your point? He asked, though his voice was shaky. I wasn't in the mood to play games anymore. I have everything, Ryan, I said calmly. The forged signature, the transfer papers, the bank transfer details. And your little Dubai getaway. That's all the proof I need. His face twisted in a mix of guilt and anger. You can't prove anything. I'll just deny it all. You can't touch me. I didn't flinch. I don't need to prove anything to you. You'll be the one trying to explain it to a judge. Ryan's expression hardened, but there was panic in his eyes now. He could feel the walls closing in. He leaned forward, his tone turning desperate. Look, I did it for both of us. You're the one who left the estate behind. You never cared about it. I was the one who took care of it, who had to make all the tough decisions. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You think you did it for me? I asked, keeping my voice steady. You betrayed me, Ryan. You sold our legacy for your own selfish gain. For a new car, a vacation, and a few fancy dinners. He was breathing heavily now, but he wasn't backing down. You're overreacting. I needed the money. Don't pretend like you would have done anything different. I shook my head slowly. You don't get it, do you? I trusted you. But now, I'm going to make sure you pay for what you've done. I stood up from the table. You'll see what I've planned next. You won't get away with this. Ryan looked like he was about to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving him in a state of confusion and fear. The next few days felt like a blur. I spent hours with my lawyer, going over the details of the estate sale and how to prove that it was illegal. But I wasn't just looking for legal revenge. I wanted Ryan to feel every ounce of the betrayal he had inflicted on me. I knew he'd be expecting me to take the conventional route, courtrooms, lawyers, pressuring him with the law. But I had something much bigger planned. I reached out to the new owners of the estate. They were a wealthy couple from out of state who had been looking for a country getaway. When they first moved in, everything seemed fine. They loved the land, the peace, the privacy. They had no idea they had been duped. I met with them in a quiet cafe. At first, they were reluctant to hear my story, but when I showed them the forged papers and pointed out how the deal had been handled in bad faith, their faces dropped. They had purchased a property that wasn't legally theirs. You mean we've been living in a house we don't own? The husband asked, stunned. Legally, yes, I said. You were misled. And Ryan, my brother, sold it to you under false pretenses. The wife looked at me with wide eyes. How could we have not known? It's complicated, I said, but now that I've exposed the fraud, you have a few options. We can go to court, or we can settle the matter privately. They wanted to settle. They didn't want to deal with the hassle of a legal battle. So, I made them an offer. I would allow them to keep the estate if they paid me back the difference between what Ryan sold it for and its real value. They agreed without hesitation. I smiled to myself. This was just the beginning. When I returned home, I could feel the storm brewing. The money was flowing back to me, slowly but surely, but Ryan had no idea what was coming. He still thought he had won. I had been keeping my movements low-key, but my next step was about to shake him to the core. I reached out to an old friend of mine who worked in media. The story of a man selling his own family's estate for personal gain was bound to attract attention, especially with a forged signature and all the details I had. I wasn't just going to let Ryan walk away from this. It took some time to set it up, but I had the perfect plan in place. I had arranged for a local news outlet to interview me, telling the full story about the betrayal. The angle would be simple: a man who used his own family's trust to sell their heritage for money. A story about greed and betrayal. Ryan wasn't expecting any of this. The day the news broke, it spread like wildfire. The headlines read, "Brother sells ancestral estate for pennies. How a forged signature stole generations of history." Within hours, Ryan's phone started blowing up. Social media erupted. The public was angry. Everyone knew about the betrayal. And the best part, Ryan had no control over the narrative. I watched from the sidelines, letting it unfold. The calls, the comments, the messages, they all came pouring in. Ryan had become the villain in a story he thought he could control. People were disgusted by what he had done. And then came the calls from the buyer, who wasn't so happy about their investment either. But I wasn't done yet. Ryan had made a grave mistake. He thought he could steal from me without facing consequences. The pressure was mounting on Ryan. The media coverage had taken its toll. He couldn't go anywhere without being recognized or confronted. His friends were turning on him, his social circle shrinking, and even his business ventures were starting to fall apart. The world had turned against him, and he knew it. One evening, he called me. His voice was filled with a mix of panic and frustration. "Why are you doing this to me?" he demanded. "I didn't mean for things to go this far. I was just trying to fix everything. You wouldn't even come back to help me. I had to make a choice." His words hit me like a punch, but I had no sympathy left. "You made the choice, Ryan," I replied coldly. "You chose greed. You chose betrayal. And now you're paying the price." "I didn't think you'd go this far," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought you'd just let it go. The estate doesn't mean anything to you anymore. It was just a house. Just land." I didn't respond immediately. The anger, the betrayal, the years of resentment, all of it was bubbling up inside me. I'd fought for this moment, for this day. The revenge I had been planning was more than just about money. It was about my dignity, about showing him that no matter how far he thought he could go, there was always a line, and he crossed it. I paused for a moment before speaking. "You don't get it, do you? It's not about the house, Ryan. It's about the respect, the trust, the family you took for granted. You lost everything." Ryan was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. "What do you want from me?" The question was simple, but the answer was clear. "I want you to understand the weight of what you did. And I want you to feel it. This is the price for betrayal." It was then I knew that this wasn't just about reclaiming the estate or the money. It was about making him feel the full weight of his actions. I hung up the phone without saying another word. Ryan would never forget what he had done. And I would make sure he understood the cost of selling our family's history for a quick profit. Ryan's world was falling apart. The news had spread beyond our hometown. The media was relentless, the public unforgiving. But the worst part was that he couldn't escape the consequences. His friends, his business partners, even our own relatives, they all began distancing themselves. No one wanted to be associated with the man who sold his family's legacy for a few $1,000,000. Ryan came to my house one night, looking defeated. His once pristine appearance was now disheveled, and his arrogance had crumbled away. "I need your help," he said, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't speak right away. I just watched him, my brother, who had betrayed me so completely. He was begging, and it almost felt like the roles had reversed. "Help," I finally said. "You think you deserve my help after what you did?" "I'm losing everything," he said. "I lost my friends, my reputation. You were right. I made a mistake. I should have never sold the estate. I should have never forged your name. Please, I'll do anything to fix this. Help me." I studied him for a long moment. I could see the desperation in his eyes, the same desperation he'd caused me to feel when he first stole our family's history. I felt no sympathy, but I wasn't a monster. I would let him suffer a little longer. He needed to realize what it felt like to lose everything, just like I did. I took a deep breath and leaned back in my chair. "You've already made your bed, Ryan. You have to lie in it." He dropped his head, shoulders slumping with defeat. "You'll never get back what you've lost. And that's the hardest lesson you'll ever learn." I could see the pain in his eyes as he turned and walked out the door, head down. And I knew deep down he was starting to understand the true cost of his actions. A few months passed since that night. The media frenzy around Ryan had died down, but the damage had been done. He was a shadow of the person he used to be. Gone were the fancy cars, the expensive dinners, the luxury vacations. His so-called friends had vanished, his business ventures were in ruins, and his name had become synonymous with greed and betrayal. He tried to reach out to me again, but this time I ignored his calls. He didn't deserve my attention anymore. The battle for the estate, the money, and the legacy was over. But in the end, it wasn't about the property or the wealth. It was about the trust, the respect, and the family that Ryan had so carelessly destroyed. I moved on with my life. The estate was mine again, the rightful owner. The money from the sale had been returned, and I had ensured that Ryan's wrongdoings were rectified. The new owners, the ones who had bought the estate under false pretenses, had been compensated, and the legal matters were all sorted. But the emotional scars lingered. I would never forget the betrayal. The person I thought I could trust the most had torn everything apart for his own gain. It wasn't just the property he had sold. It was the piece of our family's history, the trust we once had. Ryan, on the other hand, had learned his lesson the hard way. The reckoning had stripped him of everything he once held dear. His life had crumbled because of his own choices. I saw him one last time, years later, at a family gathering. He was a different man now, humbled, quieter, almost unrecognizable. But the sadness in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. He had lost more than just money. He had lost his integrity, his dignity, and his place in our family. He came up to me, his voice trembling. "I've lost everything, haven't I?" I nodded. "You did it to yourself, Ryan. You can't take back what you've done." He stood there for a moment, defeated, before walking away. And for the first time, I felt no anger, no hate. Only sadness, for the brother I had once known, the one I had trusted. In the end, betrayal had a price. And Ryan had paid it in full. The end.